Dear Novelists and Novelistas, welcome to Mile 3 of Novel Marathon, the 2023 edition. I know this video is late. The past 3 weeks have been a humbling lesson that I have to let some things go when my mental health is, well, not very healthy. Nothing unusual, just a garden variety anxiety and depression cocktail brought on by work stress. When that happens, I can get through the workday, but then I have nothing left in the tank for writing or any creative endeavors. I suppose the lesson is to live what I preach, which is to forgive ourselves for being imperfect. There is really no use in beating myself up for something I ultimately can't change. Instead, I'm inclined to look to the future, which is the only thing that we have some measure of control over. This is my reminder to check in with yourself. How are you doing? Are you patient with yourself? Do you forgive yourself when you don't meet your goals? Remember, forgiveness is key, and the future is always more important than the past. Every small step forward counts. In that spirit, let's talk about the path ahead, aka Mile 3. Here are the readings and assignments to work on for the next 2 weeks. In the One Year Novelist, we'll be reading chapters 5 and 6. In Story Genius, we'll be reading chapter 7. In This Year You Write Your Novel, we'll be reading pages 13 through 15. Finally, in Refuse to Be Done, we'll be reading pages 13 through 15. The assignment has 3 parts. Part 1 is to give your novel a working title. Give your book a name if you haven't already. Matt Bell quotes fellow writer Kevin Brockmeyer. I think of the title as the target toward which I shoot the arrow of the story. A working title serves a purpose while you're writing the book. You can always change it at the end. For now, you just need something better than novel2.docx. Part 2 is to come up with a surprising one-quarter twist for your novel. What surprising thing could happen 25% into your book that sends the story in a new direction? Brainstorm a dozen possibilities. And part 3 is to come up with a strong midpoint. Halfway through the story, how might your protagonist double down by committing to a cause, a fight, or a larger goal? What's the moment in your story when the main character throws caution to the wind and does something decisive? Here's a little more context which might help you. Let's start with the one-quarter twist. Alan Lilly calls the surprise that happens in the first quarter of your book the one-quarter twist. As the writer, your job at this stage is to consult your crystal ball, look into the future, and imagine what might happen a quarter or so through the story that will make the conflict even more urgent for your main character. How can you tighten the screws so that a challenging situation becomes insufferable and inescapable for your protagonist? Here's how Ellen Lilly describes the task at hand. Think about turns your story could take that force your protagonist to change course or alter how she's dealing with the conflict we saw in the story spark. She uses an example from Pride and Prejudice. Quote, in Pride and Prejudice, the protagonist, Elizabeth Bennet, attends a ball where nearly all her family members embarrass themselves to a very great degree, though none of them realize it. This display appalls the antagonist, Darcy. It also spins the story in a new direction because Darcy's best friend, Bingley, and Elizabeth's older sister have fallen in love. Darcy decides to do all he can to separate the two. Suddenly, Bingley leaves town. Elizabeth is devastated for her sister, and when she learns of Darcy's role in her sister's heartbreak, she believes him to be the worst of men. Think about it this way. What could happen that makes it clear to the protagonist that her usual tricks are no longer working? What could happen that causes your main character to recognize for the first time that her old way of doing things won't cut it, and that she has to change her approach? Which brings us to page 16 of the One-Year Novelist, where Ellen Lilly asks you to imagine what this one-quarter twist could look like in your book. In fact, she asks you to imagine more than a dozen different possible twists. So, start brainstorming some problems that the universe could throw at your main character about 25% through your book, which would kick the conflict into high gear. I personally found this exercise really helpful in the past because I've had the protagonist, the antagonist, and the basic conflict for my story mapped out for a while. If you're in the same boat and you've toyed with the same idea for a bit, you may find that this exercise forces you to think about your story in new ways, introducing new possibilities. Give it a shot and see how many possible twists you can come up with. Which brings us to the strong midpoint. Let's talk about the midpoint of your book. A strong midpoint is different from the one-quarter twist. The one-quarter twist was still something that was externally happening to the protagonist. A new challenge that exposed the shortcomings in her problem-solving approach and her misbeliefs about the world. But once your protagonist reaches the midpoint, she should no longer be a victim of circumstance. She needs to commit to a course of action, or in Ellen Lilly's words, she needs to throw caution to the wind. Let's go back to Ellen Lilly's example from Pride and Prejudice. Quote, "In Pride and Prejudice, Elizabeth rejects a marriage proposal from Darcy, telling him in no uncertain terms that she blames him for her sister's unhappiness and believes him to be a horrible person. This is no light matter, as Elizabeth and her sisters will be in desperate financial straits if none of them marry well. Eventually, they will lose their home due to the way their father's estate is entailed, and none are married or have any prospects. Finally, though she doesn't know it, Elizabeth is wrong about a major part of Darcy's conduct and will need to realize she loves him." So, clearly, Elizabeth is indeed throwing caution to the wind. After all, she's in a precarious situation. Her sisters are in a precarious situation. And she rejects the only prospect for a husband that she has in Mr. Darcy. And of course, none of that would have happened without the one-quarter twist, which helped set up Mr. Darcy as a terrible guy in Elizabeth's eyes. Darcy's actions wouldn't have been possible without the one-quarter twist, because those very events prompted him to interfere with Elizabeth's sister's romance, which then incurred Elizabeth's anger. So, a strong middle is the consequence of a forceful one-quarter twist. Once you brainstorm and nail down your own one-quarter twist, think about what actions your protagonist might take that is connected to the twist. How does the one-quarter twist push your protagonist over the edge and make him or her do something strong and decisive and forward-looking while still being blinded by their misbelief? And that's it. As always, you should expect to take 2 weeks to work through these questions. All the key info, the readings, and more detail on the exercises is available via a newsletter that comes out a few times a month. It's free, and you can subscribe to it by going to novelmarathon.com/newsletter. Good luck with the readings and the assignments. I look forward to checking in next time to see how it's going. Until then, happy reading, happy writing, and I'll talk to you soon.